Welcome to a fresh edition of the Life, Love, Leadership YouTube channel. And what we're doing here today is I'm having a conversation with Deborah Ivanoff. And Deborah's been a longtime friend, coach, mentor, a massive source of support in my life. And we noticed something happening with the people in our lives, whether they're clients or friends or what have you. And that is, there's so much uncertainty because we have our own individual systems collapsing, not to mention things collapsing and shifting on a global level, and it can take its toll. And we talk a lot about this in this conversation, and I want you to know one thing: if there's something to take away, it's that you are not alone if you are experiencing this. If your nervous system is shot, we talk about that. We talk about the transactional nature of our economy and how do we value each other? What is next? What is new? What is the world that we want to create? And those are some of the things that we'll talk about in this conversation. So I'm going to step back and let it go, and I hope you enjoy it. Please comment below, subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this, and without further ado, we'll jump into the conversation. And so the impetus of this is really about the conversations that we both have been having with ourselves, with each other, with our clients, and just general conversations with friends about this real collapse of systems. And we're kind of like in the middle of this revolution, right? Actually, like 3 revolutions that,
At
I
least.
mean, if you really look at it, all right, we have like an industrial revolution where jobs are changing. There's a cognitive revolution in terms of like the way we think, the way we process information. That's shifting. And
Yes.
then there's the existential part of it,
Yes.
where there's this shift in terms of how we relate to what's beyond us.
I
And
think there's
is
one
there,
more in there. I think there's one more in there, Heather, that has to do with social, like how we
yeah,
relate to one another. That's what I see a lot of people struggling. Like you mentioned, our relationship to ourselves, but also our relationship to other people
yeah,
in all of that soup.
yeah,
And then, yes, the existential. Yes. That's
yeah.
like really a hot button. It's really coming up for folks.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, like is there's this rebalancing or sort of like this rise again of like the divine feminine coming up, right? And is
Let's
that
hope.
happening? And yeah, let's hope indeed. But the thing is that our nervous systems are not built for this.
No, I know. And people of any generation that has them as adults now were not in any way prepared for this. We
Yeah.
were not raised for this. We were not prepared for this. Yes. Oh my goodness.
And so like right now we're in the thick of it. We're in the
We
thick of all
are.
of these things. Like I think we're at the beginning of the middle. I don't know, like do you agree? Like would you say like we're kind of like at the beginning of the middle or like in the because we're
I
not coming out of the
hesitate.
tunnel.
I hesitate to hazard a guess because I am not a crystal ball. I don't know. I, you know, I I'll be honest with you. It all is too big for me. It's
Yeah.
all too big for me and too much for me. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. Maybe most people feel that way. And then the sensitive people, the people who are really sensitive to other people's energies, the energies of the flaws and foibles and tragedies of the world currently, those who are sensitive to the environment. On top of that, it is literally all too much, like you said, for our nervous system, right? And so I
Yeah.
think if we're fortunate, we have people to talk to about that. And I want to ask you about your leaders and the people that you see are in positions that they're managing other people, because I sure see it in my clients. So we're challenged not only for ourselves, and then we're challenged in our family and friend groups, then we're challenged in our work and team building, then we're challenged in our city, country, state, country, world. It is a lot. If we're
Hmm.
fortunate, we have someone who can say, would you like to try this
Yeah.
tool, process, something like that? But if we aren't, oh my goodness, Oh my goodness. It is, I think non-helpful and non-healthy strategies, such as various, put in your addiction of choice, we all have them, seem to be on the rise and like
Yeah.
exploding, because without any tools, what do we do when we're just completely overwhelmed? And how do we even stop to listen to someone else's pain when we're trying to keep a lid on our own, which I do not recommend.
Right. Right. And that was actually my question for you. It's like, okay, like, putting the lid on your own pain, or listening to somebody else's pain. It's like you can't really listen to somebody else's pain and what they're going through if you don't have the capacity to listen to your own.
Well, I think that's why I said social. I think that's a lot
Yeah.
of what's going on. And I think
Yeah.
that's why a lot of people are shutting down, are numbing out, are pushing back. And I'm not saying whether that's good, bad, right, or wrong, because it is. It's what's happening. When we don't have the capacity, like you said, or the capability, when we don't have the strategies to deal with that, what do we do? And things are changing so rapidly. Every day it's a new conundrum, it's a new puzzle, isn't it? That's what we were talking about, I think, last week, was
Yeah.
what do you do when there's too many pieces and the pieces don't look like they're even of the same puzzle? I mean, what do you do? So I think that's why we said we were going to have some fun talking, and maybe we'll
Yeah. Yeah.
trigger
I
some
think
things
it's,
and trigger some other people's thoughts.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's the conversation piece, because I don't think that this conversation has really been brought to the surface. Um, it has a little bit, but I haven't seen too much of it. It's
Well,
just
no, we're
I'm
afraid to
seeing.
touch it. We're
Well,
afraid
that's
to
the
touch
thing.
it, aren't
Well, that's the
we?
thing. I don't even think that we're there to even think about it, because everything is just a reaction right now. It's
Yes,
just when you're getting pelted with so much, it's just you just react to it, and
yes,
that's all you can do.
yes.
Um, but I think what we can do is just bring that conversation up of, okay, how can you manage that messy middle, right?
Ah, the messy middle. I love that phrase. I love that phrase. We've been in the messy middle for a while now.
Girl.
I think there's more mess, but
Yeah.
I do believe in the power of whatever you want to call it, that thing inside of humans. You know, humans have such a capability for so much ignorance and cruelty. I mean, they seriously do. When we're seeing that.
And on
And
the flip side, yeah,
yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead. You go
on
ahead.
the flip side, there's also the light, right? There's also the people who are healing. There are the people who are doing
Yes.
that work. And there are the people who are really committed to creating that better world, creating, I know in some spiritual circles you call it the new earth, or whatever it is that is next, right?
Yes. I think so. I think we have very bright minds. And I think that when we can find ways to tap into whatever word you want to use, wisdom, authentic self, creativity, inspiration, right? When we have, like, when we can get our brains back, right and left brain together, calm our nervous system enough to ground and get back in touch with it, I think there is an unlimited potential. And we pulled
Yeah.
off, human beings have pulled off some amazing things in both helpful and unhelpful ways. So for those of us who
Yes.
want to vote for the helpful ways, this is good news, though. It's good news. This is a time of challenge for sure.
It's a time of challenge, but it's also a time of growth. I
I
mean, I
agree.
mean, like we have like that, we talked about the types of revolutions, but there's also the personal revolution that I think a lot of people are experiencing, where the bottom drops out and everything is falling apart, in your own personal systems and your own identity are just torn to pieces. And that's part of this process as well. And
I
so
think
it's,
so.
how do you rebuild from that?
I
And
think
it's,
I think it's different
letting
for
go.
everybody. I think it's
Yeah.
different from for everybody. And yes, I think that part where you just, maybe even the part where you give up. I don't want to say it's not about giving up, it's about surrendering, or it's about allowing, or no, maybe giving up is part of that. It could be for someone where you just say, "No, I give up. I'm just going to lay down with a pillow over my head." Well, you're going to get up the next day. I don't know this for a fact, but many people will. The human spirit is renewable, and there's something inside of us that does want to get up another day, and it does want to connect and collaborate with other people. Clearly, that's what brought you and I here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, beyond that, it's yes, you know, but it also, do you think that it's also called to do something? You know, that piece inside of us, you know, like there's
Well,
something there.
you tell me, do you feel like that? Do you feel like this time is a calling?
Absolutely.
Me too. So I can't speak to worldwide, but I can speak to there being something inside that says, this is more than what it looks like. This could be an opportunity if you want to engage and dance with it. What else could happen out of this? I,
Right.
for years now, I've been asking that question of, what am I being called to do? How can I be helpful instead of more harmful? And that's an ever evolving question to answer that I'm having with the mystery. And I'm sure you are as well. Yes, aren't you?
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah. So I
Sure.
have to guess that there are many, many people feeling that frustration of, I want to do something to help, but it's all too big, it's all too much. Is it picking up one starfish when they're all, on the beach, when they're, you can't pick up all the starfishes, but you can pick up one, which is the one that says, pick me, help me,
Yeah.
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 But to your point about it being an internal revolution, what if, I'm not saying it is, but what if it is all about that on a microcosm individually? What if we aren't all being, I love the word tempered. Do you know what tempering is? Where they put something
Yeah.
into the fire and it gets even stronger. I do wonder if we aren't all, in whatever frame of reference we have for our lives, being called to a tempering, something that will make us, that will hone us stronger, smarter, maybe softer, maybe more vulnerable, maybe more open, maybe more connected. I mean, I
Yeah.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that segues into something else that we had talked about previously is the way that we do things, right? And so because right now the way that we do things is very much on a transactional basis.
Yeah, you should set that up a little bit. I think maybe we can talk about what some of our clients are noticing, or what we're noticing in our own relationships with people and how things feel. Heather, if this is something that we're gonna, talk to other people about, I think they can relate, but probably put it in some context. So, like, let's remember why we were thinking about that.
I
Because I
don't
because I
remember
keep
why.
because I keep hearing that word transactional. Oh, so I'll just say that. I keep hearing that word. It's too transactional. So I think there is something that's coming about. People are longing. I know people
It's
are
the
throwing
way
around.
and it's how we value each other. I think that's kind of what we had
Well, I
talked
think
about.
that's what we've been conditioned. We are
Yeah.
under the giant cloud of capitalism as king, right? Hopefully late stage. hopefully, hopefully. Um, but I think that people are noticing that they are tired of it being sort of, I scratch my back, you scratch my back, and someone's keeping score. That's kind of what I
Hmm.
think of in transactional. Someone's keeping score and someone's assigning value. But I think people long for a world where, in fact, I had a friend say to me today, she said something about how she was raised, her father told her that if you give 100% in a marriage, your partner will give you 100% back. And I laughed. I just laughed. And I said, has that been your experience? And she said, not even once. She's been married 3 times. She said, not even
Hmm.
once. And I said, I was raised under that same sort of attitude. I wasn't lectured about it, but I was raised under that same sort of attitude that if you give your 100%, so will the other person or so will other people. But that has not been my experience either. In
Yeah.
fact, I've been in situations where I was dinged or, you know, punished is too strong of a word, but I was, dinged for doing my best.
Yeah.
Quiet it down a little bit, do it like the other people, kind of thing. Or the people around me were like, stop showing off, that kind of thing. It's like, and so what we were talking about is like, well, and this does have to do with the transactionalness nature of life in the States. I will say, I don't know other places. You could speak to that because you're in Spain. But I think there's this longing for really relating to people, of many hands make light the work, of we are a community, of we're working together. And yet people don't have the skill set to do that or maintain that, or communication skills to handle that. But she and I were talking, and I said, I think my experience, because I have had that experience too, that I will give 110% and the other person figures, oh, that means I don't even have to give 90% anymore. You're giving 110, So,
Right.
but I think it's finding those people, those employees, those bosses, those companies, maybe if that's even possible. So I think a lot of people are in business for themselves, but those ways of being with people that make things more equitable, right?
Sure.
I give to you out of my skills and talents, some of which you do not have. You give to me out of your skills and talents, some of which I do not have. And that synchrony, right? 1 + 1 = 18. And that's
Right.
what I
And
don't think we're doing.
no, we do it to a certain extent. Like with transactional, it's what can I get from you? What can I extract from you? How much can I get for as
For the
little as
least amount.
possible?
Yes.
That's
That's
the
tragic.
system. Yeah. But that's how we operate.
I know.
And so, to me, this can be a brilliant opportunity in terms of how we value each other. Because if you think about it, if let's say artificial intelligence comes along and it does in fact take many of the jobs that we normally would have, what are people to do? What comes after that? It
Yeah, that's
will
a big
change how we
question,
value.
isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what the
Now,
futurists are
whether
talking about
does
for
that
sure.
does that mean it's going to happen? I don't know. And then I think that's part of, being in the space of being in the messy
We
middle
don't
is that
know.
we don't
Yeah.
know. We have no friggin' clue. And I don't care who says, who's predicting the future. We do not know.
Yeah. 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 I will say this though, things have shifted and changed super, super fast. I was thinking about this last night for some strange reason. I was thinking about how you used to have to pay someone, I don't know, $50 an hour to transcribe something.
Yeah.
Now you can pay $20 a month and it'll transcribe all you want. That's wild.
Right. And
And of
then what
course,
happens to that? And what happens to that transcriber though?
exactly. Exactly. That is a good question. That is a good question. I mean, it's a hard question to answer with capitalism at the wheel,
Right.
right? At the helm. Yeah. I know what it could mean. It could be a great way for people to come together and get some of our biggest problems dealt with. But it's interesting, what you and I might agree is a problem are other things that other people in the world are flaming, that are feeding the flames of. So
Sure.
surely communication does seem to be like one of our biggest issues. And, I've studied it for years, Heather. I feel like such a beginner. I feel like such a beginner. So, what are people who've never even thought about the way they communicate? What are they to do? I don't know. I don't know. So, we fall back on that. Well, what is it worth? Let's just buy it and sell it.
Right.
But you can't really buy and sell the human spirit. You can't buy and sell human connection.
No. No.
And you can't take it with you when you die. So I think that is something that right now, not only are people feeling very overwhelmed, very max capacity, but they're also feeling very lonely. People are feeling
Absolutely.
really lonely and really alone. Like they have some of these questions in their heads. They want to talk to someone about it, but everybody's chasing the dollar because we're in what are we in? I guess a recession is what they call it. But
Yeah, I
it
don't know if
seems
it's
like
official
massive
yet.
inflation to me. It seems crazy, like the way prices are changing. It seems like this
Right.
race to get to a whole new set of zeros. I
Right.
don't.
And it's not only just chasing the dollar, it's putting out fires. Right? It's putting out the fires in the personal life at work. It's putting out fires all over the place, right? And so we're back in like this heightened state, reactive state.
Yeah.
And so I guess that can lead into how do we calm ourselves down? What are some of the tools that we can use? How can we really cope with this uncertain period right now?
And also, how can we calm ourselves down when it seems like everything is ramping up around us? How can we calm ourselves down? How can we settle in the midst of the hurricane, the
Hmm.
tornado that seems to be moving so fast? And again, I think that is an individual, like what
Yeah,
works for one person won't work for another. So
absolutely
maybe we
agree.
could maybe we could just talk about what does work for you, what does work for me. Maybe we'll prompt people to think about what works for them, because I think that, what's that phrase of you can't beat them at their own game or something like that? There's some phrase like that. Don't try to beat them at their own game. I mean, this game of more, bigger, faster, harder, more expensive, accumulation. Uh, I think for most of us, when we hit a certain age, we're like, ugh,
Yeah.
that, you know, if we have any sense to us, we're like that anyway. You we want to enjoy our lives at all. So what then? Right? So what then if not that? So when we realize that we want to stop the madness, well, what is our first step? And that could be on a daily basis when we get ourselves all spun up. I don't know. What is it for you? How do you ground yourself? How do you come back to yourself, Heather?
Honestly, it's the first thing is just being aware of where I get off track.
Mm,
And for me, like I feel it in my body. So
mm,
like I can feel my nervous system, you know, get heightened, get, hyper vigilant. I can
mm.
notice things like, okay, like where, am I tightening up somewhere? Like, that level of self-awareness is the starting point. And for me, it's like, okay, I'm picking up on this. And sometimes my nervous system just gets so out of whack, like I need to just like step away, take a few deep breaths, go for a walk, go be in nature and just calm myself down. Because it
Yeah.
does take a little bit. And sometimes I'm not in a position to do that because, the day is just going, but I can at least sit down and calm myself,
And so
and
what's the
just take a couple of,
advantage? What's the advantage for you in that? Like when you do that, when you give yourself that, then what changes for you that wouldn't have changed?
I think clarity. For
Mm,
me, it's clarity. And that's a great question. It's like, I know that when I'm reacting from like that heightened state, from that pressure state, I know that my decisions aren't going to be the best. I'm acting out of fear and I'm reacting. And everything is just like, okay, I have to handle this right now because my nervous system can't handle it. That has shifted to the point where it's just like, okay, I can take a couple of deep breaths. I'm calmed down. I can think clearly. My mind isn't just racing after problems. It's focused on, okay, like what's going on right now, what's true right now.
yeah, nice.
And then I can, ask the question about what I'm facing.
What do you find? I know you have clients you help. What do you find works for them? Is it the same thing? Is it some different things?
For the most part, it's stepping away. even for like
Stepping
2 seconds.
away.
Yeah, just stepping away, clearing your head, walk around the block, like that type of thing. That makes a big difference, especially if you're like straight up busy or you don't have like that like, heightened awareness,
Mm-hmm.
or the self-awareness. Just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I know I'm not in a good spot, but I'm gonna go for a walk and just clear my head, get some fresh air.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
something simple as that
Yeah.
can make such a massive difference.
Well, because I love seeing process and I love pulling things apart, that's why I asked the question. And because everybody does do it a little bit differently, but in the stories and in myself, and I'm thinking of some clients of my own, there's a couple things that sort of come to the top if people are interested in doing that for themselves. Like you mentioned, the awareness. I'm
Yeah,
spinning, it's
yeah,
spinning, it's too
right,
much. I'm feeling it building, or whatever
right,
word they use, or whatever their experience is. Disengaging in some way, or moving laterally too. You can move to the side to do something slightly different. Take a walk. That's getting
yeah,
moving. Sometimes it's the worst when we're sitting still and it's all happening in our head, in our tummies, right? So getting
yes,
moving, but also nature, just across the board, nature, being out, fresh air, breathing, nature, moving, something totally different.
yeah,
Yeah, those are all gateways into, what do they say? You can't solve the issue, the problem, the situation with the same mind that is holding, I'm going to say that's holding it in place, not the same mind that created it, but the same mind that's holding it in place, right?
right,
So doing something different. But you can do that in all kinds of different ways. I know people that like to go for a drive. I know people who want to go out and go horseback riding. I know people who
yeah,
want to swing, or go play with their dog or their kids, So it the form that it takes is the important part is finding these reset skills, right? And then sharing them with one another, you
yeah,
know, supporting one another in these reset skills, right? I recently had a little upset with my son, and I could see he was getting really upset. And I also knew he wasn't hearing what I was trying to convey. And he said, I have to leave. He walked out the door. And I remember thinking, I could have just as easily thought, he doesn't care enough to stay here and deal with this. Some people might, but knowing him and knowing what I know about communication, my thought was, good, he's taking care of himself.
yeah,
Good, he's taking care of himself. He's doing just what you said, disengaging. He's walking around the block, which is what he was doing, walking around the block. And when he came back, he had his thoughts together. So what he said, what came out of his mouth, was what he really had taken some time to think about, rather than just a reaction. Yeah. And I really appreciated that. Later, I told him that. Later, when everything was all calmed down, I said, I really liked about that. Thank you so much. And then I mentioned that to my daughter, and she said, do you know, I have friends that if I did that to them, they would say, you don't even care about me. You just walked away. I said, I know,
right,
it's all in about the meanings. It's so complicated, isn't it?
yeah,
It's relationship things. So funny.
yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, I want to get back to this transactionalist, Heather, because
yes,
I want to give people something to chew on. You and I can't solve the world conditioning,
no,
transactionalism, I don't think, but we can support our own values in our life. That's what we can do. We can support our own
yeah.
values in our own life. So let's think together. What would be ways, if we don't like that feeling of it being transactional, of like trying to work this out with you, and now you want to put a dollar amount on it? You pay me this much, I pay you that much, I give you this much time, you give me this much towards my living expenses. If we want it to be something beyond that, how could we support that in ourselves? How could we do that in the world?
I think what I've learned in my own personal experience, in my own personal journey, is that the value that you have is inherent, right? It's just you have value no matter who you are, what you do. Your value is not what you do, it's how you show up. It's the intention that you bring, it's the energy that you bring, it's the presence that you are. That's the value. And I think if we can personally detach the financial aspect, the money aspect from the value and the presence that we are, I think that's a great starting point.
Well, say a little bit more about that. I'm going to want to
Mm-hmm.
get real practical about it because oftentimes this comes up in, as a coach or teacher, we've created a program for someone and they want to make a deal, or we're offering our services to someone, or someone's offering their services to us, and we can't pay that much, or we don't want to pay that much, but we do want to honor them, their inherent qualities. How do we negotiate that? How do we take care of our own livelihood? How do we be part of someone else or others taking part of their own livelihood, not getting swept away with some of that? Let's just talk a little bit about how it practically works. How does that practically work?
Well, yeah, I think if you know your value, regardless of money, right? If you know the present that you bring, if you know the intention that you bring, if you know the energy that you bring, you are going to, I think, see yourself in a different light, right? Because a lot of the times, especially for women, we don't see ourselves as our true worth, right? Or we are perceived as what we produce. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if you get beyond that, if you see the truth within yourself, you can know and bring to the table your own negotiating skill and say, no, do you know what? That is not acceptable. I know that I'm worth more. And it's
So
kind of like
speaking
raising
up.
your own. And so, yeah, I think it's speaking up. It's really like not abandoning yourself, not, and being able to stand up for yourself. And yes, it
Mm-hmm.
does take courage. And yes, it does take bravery to have that conversation. But if you're coming from
Mm-hmm.
the place of your own truth, you're much more able to do it.
Such a tricky thing, though, isn't it, Heather? Really, we
Yeah.
have such deep conditioning around that. I just really want to
And it doesn't take away from the
recognize that.
practical needs of, like how do I do that when I've got bills to pay, right? Or how do
Exactly.
I do that when, I have basic needs that need to be taken care of? I
Yeah.
think,
And that's what we're talking about. A lot of people are really afraid about all of that right now,
yeah,
at all levels, at all levels. Like people
trust
can
me, I
be
know.
right, right. But I mean, I've worked with CEOs of whole companies and they're going home sweating at night. How am I going to make payroll? You
Right,
know,
right.
that's what they're thinking about. Is the company still going to be around in 6 months?
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, absolutely.
at every level, there are those concerns. It's not like nobody gets away scot free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's kind of like, are we, and this is kind of like part of that messy middle, and this is just a question, I don't have an answer for it, but is, are we moving away from that monetary system?
Ooh, that's actually a really interesting question. I know
You
people who
know what
think
I
we
mean?
are. I
Yeah,
think I know people who think that we are on the verge of a complete collapse or breakdown where we're going to definitely be more at a barter type system. I don't know if anything's going to happen that like overnight, but definitely things are changing. So, you know what a big fan I am of flexibility. So it is good to start thinking about and providing those relationships. My daughter says know
right.
your neighbors, right?
Absolutely.
Know the resources of you
Absolutely.
and your friends. Help people and ask for help. See, that's the other thing. A lot of people offer help, but they never ask. So
Yes.
knowing your value, knowing your worth is coming to know, experimenting more and more and more with asking and
Yeah.
hearing no, but asking again
Right.
and
And
saying no sometimes and yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But really getting in touch with what you need, right? Because sometimes we get so focused on what's around us, the external, like what other people need, that we
Yeah.
neglect ourselves. And so I think that's part of that process is understanding, okay, what do I need in this moment? And
Well,
how do I ask for that?
that's why I'm talking about that conditioning, because I think people might disagree, but I think most of us women have been conditioned to take care of other people with
Yeah,
this subtle suggestion innuendo that when you do so good enough, well enough, long enough, you will be taken care of. And that's
right.
where a lot of, yeah, see, nobody's getting taken care of. There's no reward.
Yes.
So it is learning new day-to-day skills around being more equitable, being more discerning about who you want to work with and how, all of those things. Those
Yeah,
do transcend money, by the way, don't they?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to be more intentional. Because a lot of times, I mean, I know in business, I've seen leaders do this. I've experienced this myself very early on, where it's just like, okay, like I'm just going to take on anybody just
Oh, sure.
because, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, I'm all right, you want to work together. I know it's not the best fit, but we can try to make it work. And whew, I get the relief that I need.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still a lot of that. I
Yeah.
think the way we hire and keep or don't keep and let go, and the way we look to be hired, and there's there's all these little pockets of this living in all those little pockets of different situations. But I think what we're talking about here is the first step is coming back to an awareness,
Yeah.
coming back to caring for ourselves right now in this moment so that we can get some clarity about a next step for ourselves. And you and I have been talking about those more personal, messy pockets as you go from one stepping stone to the other. I think that's
Yeah.
something to remember too, is there's so many false ideas and sort of claims, you know, follow your bliss and the money will follow. Uh, Work my program and life will be easy ever after. You'll get rid of this pride. And that just isn't, that's not what I see. I'll tell you that. That's all I can say. It's not what I see
Yeah.
with people. What I see with people is that it's more like every time you go to be stronger as a person or move those muscles of whatever skill set you're trying to get, there is an inherent challenge in that to,
Yeah.
you know, uh, and what else can you do and be and change? And, I think we are being called if we want to be, I guess,
Yeah.
if we
And
want to.
there seems to be like an undoing, right? That's part of this process, where, it might be done. The universe might just be like, all right, we're going to strip you down. Doesn't matter. We're going to take all that stuff that you're worried about, that you're scared of. We're just going to give it to you. Or, oh, you really want to hang on to that identity? Nope. Go bye bye. You know what I mean? And so
I
that's
do,
part of that.
unfortunately, know what you mean.
Oh, I know. I know. I think I think a lot of us, most of us can say that, we have hit that point in some point in our lives, or we're going through it right now.
I'm
And it is that
fascinated.
undoing.
I'm fascinated by that idea of I want to be free of this. I want to get over this. And then the universe, or whatever you believe in, complies and says, okay, we're just going to sweep everything away. You get a fresh start. You get a fresh start, or whatever it is. I'm gonna humble you, or I'm gonna take that away so you don't have to think about it any longer, or
Yeah,
I'm gonna, offer you a situation where you're gonna be offered the chance to be stronger,
yeah,
or to detach from what other people think of you. Carolyn Mace years ago said, she said, say a prayer to the universe for love. I dare you. That's what she said. I dare you. Because what
yeah,
she was saying, and I heard her speak live many years ago, what she was saying is that the minute you say, I want to be more loving, I want more love in my life, The universe is going to bring you the most unlovable person imaginable, because that's what you need. That's what you need to become more
Yeah.
loving, to experience more love, to gain that skill. And you could say that about any other word other than love. I want to be richer, or I want to be
Yeah.
stronger, or I want to be living in community. Whoa, boy, do I know a lot of people who are like all about community or collaboration, and boy, they get such contrast. And
Yeah.
it's not because they're bad or doing it wrong, or it's because when we go for something that we want, the stuff that gets in the way shows up,
Yeah.
and maybe that's happening on a worldwide stage right now. Maybe we're saying we want the world different. And so, boy, some real contrast is showing up.
Yeah.
And in our
Absolutely.
businesses, I think that happens in our businesses too, you know?
Yes. No
Yeah,
question. No
yeah.
question.
And in our clients' lives too.
I know.
That's why, as a coach or a guide, teacher, I personally think it's so important for us to be doing our own work. I know you agree with that too, Heather. And
Oh,
that's
no
why I
question.
think we're often offered challenges that feel pretty big for us, is because they do fuel our compassion and our empathy. And also, they give us enough room when we have to find our own center to sit quietly with it. That's the only way we can be with another person when they're going through theirs. And everybody's going through theirs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wild time.
Oof. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I mean, that's all you could really say is like, yeah, it's a wild time. But at the same time, I also see opportunity, the opportunity for growth, the opportunity for expansion, the opportunity to move through this messy, chaotic, unpredictable time, hopefully with some grace, for ourselves and for those around us.
If there was another side, or an other side, not another side, but an other side at the end of the
Yeah.
tunnel, if you got to choose what was on the other end when we popped out the other side finally, what would that be?
Oh, that's
How
such
would
a
you
great
do?
question because
I
I honestly
know.
haven't really thought too much about, like, I've asked the question myself, like, okay, what's beyond this?
Hmm.
But as far as like what I would like to see, I really haven't put much thought into it. Like, okay, what is that world that I would want to create? And I think that that's a question that all of us can answer, because that is something that I'm sure we haven't really like gotten to that point yet where we can even think about it, because we're just stuck in the stuff that's right now, in the fires, right? And putting out fires. Um, but yeah, this is part of that opportunity of, okay, what do we want to create? And I think, yes, I want a world that's more fair. Yes, I want a world that's more equitable, but I want one where everybody has their own light, and they bring that
Mm,
light, they find that light within and they bring it forth, right? In however way they feel is best.
I love that. I love that so much.
I think, and that's part of, bringing your joy,
Hmm.
that, what I like to call a joyful rebellion. That's kind of like what's needed now, but it's, yes, it's idealistic. You can call it that, sure, but what if we are heading that? What if we are heading there?
Well, which way do we want to go? Towards idealistic or towards nihilistic?
I'll take idealistic. I don't care. I mean, I don't care. I like, shoot for the stars, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked the question. That's why I asked the question. It's
Yeah,
because,
and so I'll turn the tables on you. Like, what's your vision? What do you see? The what's beyond.
well, if I had a magic wand and I could, say this would be my vision for the other side of the tunnel, it would be healing ourselves first.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this because it seems so big, but I really, and I think there's a big tunnel to get there. but I would want to see that. I don't even know how to put it into words. That words where everybody is accepted for who they are, like where they came from, what their social status, their financial status, their gender, their sexuality, their education, their, like, what we were talking about, where there is an acknowledgement that everybody has their value, where I want to call it out. So I'll just say where certain people didn't make 3 times as much for the same job as other people based on where they came from, what they looked like, any of that stuff. That, like, people were really valued. The people did their people answered their own inner callings for whatever they needed, whatever they needed. No one else was telling them. They were following their own invitation to healing, growth, acceptance, allowance, whatever. I would say that, and then healing of the planet, of nature, this respect for nature, and caretakership of the earth. And behind that just has to go communication, because there's so much disagreement about what something needs. But this worship of the dollar, all this, if that, like, if we were all empaths, if we were all empathetic, if we were all highly sensitive, right? If we could all tell the truth to ourselves and one another, if we had some skills to communicate things and really work them out, if we all honored our, like, I love what you said, that bright light, honored one another's bright light. So there was no dumb idea and no dumb questions. And we really were able to speed up that learning curve. That would be, yeah, I can feel that. That would, one of my values is harmony. So,
Mm-hmm.
If we had a harmonized planet,
Yeah.
Really an honoring of one another's, the beauty of one another's cultures, right?
Yeah.
And get rid of all the damn borders, for goodness sake. Those crazy imaginary lines that everybody's fighting over. We're one planet, for goodness sake, If people could really understand that, good medical care, good education, good mental health care for folks, everybody being able to garden. So many things. I could go on and on. A pet
Right.
for every person who wants one. We'll care for it well.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things on the other side. That's what it would be. Everybody's bright lights being honored.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think we're the only two people, Heather, who long for that, beyond that transactional stuff, who long for the real stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody just giving from who they are and their gifts.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that it and that is a next step, is like getting beyond that transactional nature and seeing the worth and value within each other, and kind of like removing that ego nonsense, right? The
But that is where it
judgment and that
starts.
sort of,
We have to do our own work, or we won't
yeah,
even recognize it in other people, I think.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the process, is doing your own work.
And tear away all that conditioning. There's so much subversive messaging that we just, I think of it like we're this little paper mache thing that just, this sticky stuff has been put on us, and we're looking out of the world as if that's the real thing. But, our little tender skins are underneath all that. Just pull all that off. This has been fun. What do we want to talk about next?
Good question. I
Next
think
time.
this was a good, I know this was a good conversation. Um, Do we want to like just have a clip in there to wrap things up? Um,
Sure, I think that would be a good idea. What?
yeah. Just to say, okay, like I'll take it from here. I think one of the things as we close is yes, things are changing. Hopefully out of this conversation, you've gotten something out of it. Number one, to know that you're not alone. I think you're not alone in feeling this way. You're not alone in thinking this way. All we wanted to do is just have that conversation with ourselves. And hopefully you can join in. We certainly welcome comments, welcome feedback, and I'm certainly curious to know what you think as what are your thoughts in terms of where we're going, and how you're coping with where we are now, this messy middle. So, and of course, Deborah, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, of
This
course,
is
Heather,
this
this has
is
been fun.
this has been fun. It's just a very open conversation, and we were just, I mean, honestly, it's just we were just playing. Like this wasn't really scripted. It was just we have an idea, we're just going to go with it. We sense that a lot of people are feeling this way, and so this was just a fun conversation to have, but a necessary one.
I hope other people are having their fun conversations,
Yeah,
and hopefully they're sharing them with other people too, you know? And
yeah,
I think it is important for us to take these things out into the light.
absolutely. Absolutely. So that wraps us up for today, and I think we're going to have another conversation soon, but I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.